A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Wednesday, November 4th, 2015. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Chris Gundani.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are remembering the life and death of veteran soccer administrator and former Zimbabwe national team player, Paul Gundani.
To join our discussion, please phone us directly at 001-202-619-077 and we'll call you back again. The number again is 202-619-2077.
And as usual, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930 and also 15460 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
And on the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com or www.voashona.com or still at www.voandebele.com.
isusu veZIFA ndivo vanoita nezvemamiriro ebhora muno munyika. Tiri vanhu vanosvikana neupenyu hwemapureyers vari ivo vakapuwa mutongo wekuti havachatambi bhora zveupenyu hwese. Asi tinovimbawo kuti komiti yeappeals yakaiswa neveZIFA ichakwanisa kuti itarise nyaya yevakomana ava yererutsa mutongo wakanga wakapuwa nekomiti yaRichard Chief Justice Ibrahim. Mari dzakataurwa dzakawandisa, endi panyaya iyoyo isusuwo tinokumbirawo veZIFA kuti dei vanga vangoramba vari pamari dzakagara dzakatarwa neGeneral Assembly yeZIFA gore rakapera, idzo dzinove dziri muma-1500, kuitira kuti mapureyers ava vavewo nemukana wokukwanisa kuti vasvitse nyaya dzavo kudaro dzavakaisa idzi. As we have been saying before, that giving players levy bans will not solve the issue at hand, but at least opting for fines, that will also be another way of making justice to the case which was done by the accused. Our view has been that ZIFA is charged exorbitant amounts, which some of the players, for example, like Guthrie, who is playing here in Zimbabwe, will be very difficult for him to raise the funds to pay the appeal. We also advocate for ZIFA to go back to the old fees which were put in place by the General Assembly last year, which are in the region of 1,500, so that the players are also accorded an opportunity to exercise their right of appealing against the previous judgment.
The music there of superstar Oliver Mutukudzi, and of course the voice that you were hearing is the voice of the late Paul Gundani. And once again, thanks for joining us, and you are listening to Studio 7 Live Talk. And this evening we are talking about the death of a legend, a soccer legend, Paul Gundani.
Yes, Blessing. Remember the former Warriors defender who played for Zisco Steel and Lancashire Steel died at a private clinic in his hometown of Kwekwe in the Midlands at lunchtime after a short illness. He had been taken to the clinic in the morning after his condition had deteriorated. It is understood the former Dream Team stalwart was the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe Secretary General. He first complained of fever and headache on Sunday.
And of course, for soccer enthusiasts, a few months ago, Gundani complained that the country's ex-footballers are terribly letting down the national game and leaving it at the mercy of pathetic administrators who have dragged it into a quagmire. Chris.
Yes, Blessing. Those who want to join in the discussion, you can phone us directly at 001 202 619 2077, and we'll call you right back at the number again, 001 202 619 2077.
Of course, you can also send us a message on WhatsApp. Our number is 001 202 465-0318. hongu hama wadiwa nasi tira kuti tinge tichirangarira mufi Paul Gundani uyo aitambira chikwata chema Zimbabwe Warriors, asi pakushaya pake anga achikurudzira iye kuti pange pachichengetedzwa kodzero dzevatambi venhabvu achishanda nesangano reFootballers Union of Zimbabwe. Gundani ashaya nhasi chinova chiitiko chabata vanhu vakawanda, uye anga ari munhu wataitaura naye zvakanyanyisa pano pachirongwa cheLiveTalk kana nezvimwe zvirongwa zvedu zvepano paStudio 7. Chris.
Yebo Blessing, njengoba lizwileke lamhlanje sixoxa ke ngokutshona kukaMuyi uPaul Gundani. uGundani ke nguye obe khokhela ke inhlanganiso ebona ngobudlelwano njalo lokuhlaliseka kuhle kwabadlala ezenguqu lapha iFootballers Association, njalo imbali yake imbali sibili egxile kakhulu kwezomdlalo wenguqu. Wake wadlalela iqembu leLancashire Steel, wadlalela njalo iZisco Steel kanye lalo iqembu elikhulu, iqembu lama Warriors. Blessing.
And I think, Chris, we have our first two guests lined up. First, we have Marlene Chiedza Gadzirai, who worked with the late. Good evening, Marlene.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for calling me.
Thank you. And we also have veteran broadcaster and sports analyst, Ezra Chisa Sibanda. Good evening, Ezra.
Very good evening to you guys. Hopefully, school in America, sad news coming all the way from Zimbabwe about Paul Gundani.
Very sad indeed. I mean, judging from the fact that the last time we talked to him on this particular program, we were talking about the late Willard Mashinkila Kumalo.
Yes, indeed. And I was involved in that show, and he has been my friend. We always communicate on WhatsApp.
Very sad indeed. Chris, maybe.
Yes. So we start off with you, Chisa Sibanda. We know you know Gundani very well, and what are your thoughts about him? What can you share with him? I mean, what can you share with us about him?
Thank you very much, Chris. Most of Zimbabweans, the name Paul Gundani is known for football. This is a guy who played football for Zisco Steel. He played for Lancashire Steel. He played for Zimbabwe Warriors under Reinhard Fabish. Remember, when we say the dream team, we're counting the people like Paul Gundani. These are the guys who were on the brink of qualifying for United States of America World Cup in 1994, and they lost to Cameroon 3-1 after going all the way to France to play a replay with Egypt. Game finished 0-0 in France. So Paul Gundani was part of that squad, the dream team, which comprised of Martin and Lovo, you name it, Norman Mapeza, Peter, Adam, Mercedes, and Willard. And it's so devastating. After we spoke with him live on this Studio 7 live talk, talking about how we can resuscitate our football in Zimbabwe, blaming the administrators, the politicians who are coming to interfere with our sport. Paul Gundani has been strong and has spoken, trying to call or recall all former footballers, all our legends to get involved in the game. And sadly, now he's gone. before he fulfilled his project of trying to lure back all our legends to come back to run our game, which has been diverted or taken over by politicians. It's sad, really.
Thank you so much. I know, Chiedza, you were very young, or you were not yet even born when Gundani was playing for Zisco still at the national team. But you worked with him at the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe. Can you tell us about Gundani, the administrator?
Yeah, well, that's very right. The time that he played, all I really have, I just thought was in the office where he had to always tell me who was who in the pictures and what he did during his playing days. But then, as an administrator, when I started working for Footballers Union of Zimbabwe, I got into Footballers Union of Zimbabwe as an accountant by profession, having a degree in accounting. But then working with Paul Gundani, he then took it upon himself to teach me more about football itself, what really meant, what football administration meant. So this went beyond me just looking at receipts and doing numbers and figures for the union. He made me read FIFA constitutions, FIFA rules. He got me to understand what a labor contract meant, to the extent of even dragging me to the labor court so that we would represent players together. So he's a person who was very passionate about the welfare of soccer players, but at the same time, he also wanted to develop the Secretariat of Footballers Union of Zimbabwe, and also wanted us to be a complete session. What I only could not do was then, of course, become a soccer player like he did. But then he was more of a mentor to me.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Yes, still with you, Chiedza. Could you tell us what is the state now of the union itself? In terms of helping the footballers, what can you say that Gundani has achieved?
What I can say in terms of, well, maybe I'll just say the kind of legacy that Paul Gundani left is that footballers now have a voice, and the Footballers Union, he made the Footballers Union a voice for the voiceless, who are the players. So we knew that clubs would definitely be afraid if they heard that the FAS was going to talk to them or attack them concerning the welfare of specific players, to the extent that, this is something that many people don't know. But then if a player came to FAS and wanted to be represented in terms of contract negotiations with the club, sometimes clubs would actually refuse, because they knew how tough Paul Gundani was, because he was a man of integrity and he knew what it meant to be a player. He knew what it meant to have contracts being breached. So, having had Paul Gundani in that position as secretary general, he's a person who opened up a whole new world in Zimbabwean football, so that players would know their rights, clubs also to get a bit to understand and respect players' rights. Not all clubs do respect players, but then the majority became really wary of the fact that there's an organization that is being run and led by people like Paul Gundani and Desmond Maringwa. So he did leave that legacy, and of course, we still say that he's just gone too soon. The project is not yet 100% complete. There's still so many things, so many issues that we had drafted, so many things that needed to be signed. But then we just hope to continue with the legacy and fulfill the dream that he had when they started and founded the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Yes, blessing. We have a caller on the line. Gift Chuma. Kunjani? Siyaphila. Ungaphi weZimbabwe?
Mina seSlovenia kuma resettlement eSlovenia ba.
Kuhle ka. Ungasitshela ke imbono yakho ngodaba esilalo lamhlanje egudweni?
No, udaba lolu luyazisusiza kakhulu ngoba ngakhangela undoda losithileyo Paul Gundani. Ubesenza umsebenzi omkhulu ukunceda ama-players amanye akade befuna ukudlaliswa besiswela izimali zabo, yena ubebamela ebanceda ukuthi bazuze izimali zabo. So sikhanya umsebenzi omkhulu awutshileyo kungasakali ukuthi lava vanhu vakaneta vazaitola yini mali dzavo ndivana sokupere kunze ponguti muntu isikhathi esincane esenza umsebenzi omuhle kangako kwaponguti wakakusekho into emangalisayo sipere.
Hayi kuyadanisa kakhulu. Hayi sibongile kakhulu ba. Blessing.
Yeah, before we take the next caller, maybe let's just go briefly to Ezra and say, Ezra, you touched on the issue of administration that the late Gundani was pushing for former players to be involved in soccer. He was complaining that, there are some people who have hijacked the world's #1 sport. Do you think this message will be heeded by former players to get involved in the administration of soccer?
Paul Gundani, Blessing, has been all over the country visiting legends and former players. I remember meeting him in Bulawayo when he was speaking to the players like Oraman Kumbo, even Oma Pepa, and before even Willard Kumaro died, and said, guys, you need to come back to football. You cannot abandon and say, no, you are not going to be involved because there's too much politics in it. Let's try to fight and protect our game. The game has got nothing to do with politics. The game says no tribe. The game says no race, no political affiliations or whatever religious beliefs. This is a sport for everyone, by every Zimbabwean. Let's come back to football. I don't know now because the players were not forthcoming. Most of them, they fear that the game is too much politics in it. So I don't know now since that Paul is gone, what is going to happen from now on. Because at the moment, Paul, when I was speaking to him, he was saying he was struggling to lure the legends back to the game. He was saying all the legends, they think of coaching. If they don't coach, they are gone away from the game. So what he was saying that he's on a mission after working with the players at the same time trying to lure the veterans back to the game. So I'm not sure now what is going to happen.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, good evening, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are remembering the life of a veteran soccer player, Paul Gundani, who passed on today after a short illness. And of course, our guests this evening, we have Marlene Chieza Gadzirai, who worked with Gundani at the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe. And we also have veteran soccer commentator and analyst, Ezra Chisa Sibanda, a broadcaster in his own right. Tina mkoma Marvin vari South Africa. Makadi mkoma Marvin? Aiwa, tiripo zvedu. Tipewo pfungwa dzenyu nekushaya kwavagundani.
Tinozwa kurwadziwa mukoma Blessing nezvatanzwa manera anayo. Bhora redu ranga rakasimudzirwa namukoma Paul Gundani. Ndofunga tichiri vadiki takangokura tichivasapota tichivaona vari kunational team nekuzosvika pakuzobuda kwavo pavaenda kuoverseas nekuzodzoka kwavo nekusimudzira maplayers wechiencourage maplayers wakatrayawo kupinda mukomiti kuti vatorewo position yeZIFA time yekuti mapoliticians anga momakawa time yachoyo vanozokwanisa zvavo kubudirira asi havana kurasa mbereko vakaramba vachienderera mberi vachiencourage kubva kumaplayers maformer players ese kubva kuna midynamos highlanders vese vaisanganisa kwese chinhu zvaifadza so ndine flu zvangu asi ndanzwa kurwadziwa pana mukoma Paul ndakanganwa zvangu nickname yavo but asi ndotenda nebasa ravo ravakasiya kumhuri yeZimbabwe kubva vakatarisa nyaya dzana pasuwa dzese dzavakamirira dzedynamo dzekuti pasuwa azopiwa mari yake zvinhu zvakufadzirwa nemaplayers kuti maclubs anga asingabhadhari vanga vakutotyawo nekomiti yanga yaumbwa naPaul Gundani ndinodada ungava zvororo zvavo murugare mukoma Paul Gundani.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru mukoma Marvin.
No, thank you.
Of course, Marvin says he has a cold, but he said, he has been pained and he had to call. But he's praising the late Gundani for representing the rights of all the soccer players and also coaches. Tina mukoma Daniel vari South Africa. Makadi mukoma Daniel? Aiwa, tiri nani mukoma Daniel. Nyaya iri mudariro mainzwa tiri kutaura nezvekushaya kwava Paul Gundani.
ya taita zvimwe zvinotirwadza zvikuru kushaya kwapo
mukoma Daniel, foni yenyu inenge iri kumbokata-kata, madi kumboti fambe mbichana.
Okay, I think network.
Network iri kunetsawo kuSouth Africa?
Ya, network iri kunetsa kwatiri kunoku.
Okay, muri kupi kuSouth Africa?
Kubinoni.
Oh, kubinoni. Okay. Tipe pfungwa dzenyu.
Ya, pfungwa dzangu dzekuti manje zvinhu zvatikaite pakushaya kwapo. Apa ndaikuita kuti yangwa wada kukuudza kuti ZIFA ichikwaderera.
Chinenge chokwadi, vatorawo mapepa vatifarira kukwikidza vachiyangwa.
Saka vanozokwanisa here kubhadhira vatambi kuti bhora riri munyika rikukanganisika nekusingapa vatambi mari.
Ipapo tisingaziye, asi munhu anenge asarudzwa kuti atungamire nhabvu mukoma Daniel, hatitarisire kuti ndiye anenge achifanira kubhadhara mari yake muhomwe. Pane mari dzinobva kuZIFA uku mukoma Ezra anogona kuFIFA mukoma Ezra anogona kutsanangura ipapapa, dzinokwanisa kushandiswa nemasangano akaita seZIFA, asi ngoti mari dzacho dzinenge dzisinganyatsozofambiswe zvakanaka. Mukoma Ezra, mungatipinde ipapo mbichana.
To lead an association like Ebora, you don't need money from your pocket. You are not supposed to do it. You are supposed to use association money to run our football. You are supposed to lure a corporate world to come and sponsor the game. FIFA gives grants every year, over 1 million grants. Zimbabwe national team plays average about 7 games per year or even less. So you don't need much. You need sponsorship. There is money from the gate takings. If we're going to allow the people with money to come over and take over the football, then we're not being helpful to our game. Football is known is a sport for the poor. It's a sport for everyone. It's not a sport for the rich. Otherwise, if it's a sport for the rich, you wouldn't be having all these Messis, wouldn't be having all these Ronaldos. Look at their backgrounds, where they came from. You need someone who understands the game, who has been to the ground. Somebody, agatamba bora kumbare, barefooted, kana kumakokoba, or anyway. Those are the people needed in the game. Look at all the soccer stars. You look at Stanley Sinyondunduma, where they came from. Look at this Vitalis Takawira. You can name any player, Benjan Marwar, where he came from Makwekwe. All these players, they understand the game because they came from the grassroots. I cannot come as a bull down and in a million and say I'm going to run the game. It's unfair to the footballers.
Manzwa kamukoma Daniel, hazvidi kuti unzi une mari yakawanda basa rekuendesa national team kunotamba mitambo harisi remutungamiri weZIFA. Mari dziripo uye kana zvichifambiswa zvakanaka chinoita kuti mamakambani arambe kubatsira inyaya yekuti panenge pachitwa zvehuori, asi zvinhu zvikachanzofambiswa mugwara rakanaka munhu wese anokwanisa kunge achimirira kuti akwikwidze kana kuti kutungamira sangano reZIFA, nekungoti zvatakujaira mazuva ano zvekuti mutungamiri ndiye anenge aine chibhanzi pane dambudziko. Aiwa, asi tinokutendai zvikuru mukoma Daniel nekupinda muchirongwa chedu.
Mwaita munokwazisira vabereki vangu.
Aiwa, tinofunga vari kuzvinzwa mwashuma, tinotenda zvikuru.
Okay, mwaita.
Chris.
Yes, blessing. Let's go back to Chiedza. Chiedza, Mr. Gundani passed away, unfortunately, when the hunt for the ZIFA president was on the way. Did he ever share with you what kind of president he would have preferred to head ZIFA?
Well, definitely this is something that he had always been talking about even before there was a hunt for a ZIFA president, when things were not going well in terms of player welfare. And because the issue of player welfare was something that was at the center of his heart, he's always wanted an administrator who understood the game in its entirety. And I'm not sure if you managed to see his last message. What he had always wanted was to have a former player leading the game of football. Whenever he came to the office, he would come to me and say, well, here's an accountant, would you be able to run a dentist association? And I said, no, because I don't know how to do that. So for him, it was more like he wanted somebody who understood the game, who had been in the trenches, so to say. So he was more worried about the fact that there were very few players who wanted to get into administration after retiring from football. Many players just get into coaching or then, of course, become paupers and that's it. And there were very few people who were coming in to get in to learn administration. And again, if I may say that it was one of the projects and programs that the Footballers Union was starting to run, that we're going to have, we're going to send players to school who already had paid school fees for some footballers to go for coaching courses and administration courses, so that in the end they would be able leaders for ZIFA. So he was a person who had a vision for ZIFA, maybe not necessarily for the 5th of December, but then in the long run, his vision really was always for a person who played football, a football person who understood football, and not necessarily politicians or just money moguls.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, a good evening, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the passing on of a soccer legend, Paul Gundani. Chris.
Yes, Blessing. We have another caller on the line. Silo Mtoli, unjani ba? Umtoli.
Yebo wa.
Okay. Unjani ungaphi kwa-South Africa?
Johannesburg la.
Johannesburg. Kunjani khona apha eJohannesburg?
Hayi Johannesburg kuhle futhi.
Kulungile.
Kuhle kulomoya kuyabandelela uyakufunda nokushishanyana konke. Kodwa iwela ikhuthu.
Kulungile. Ungasipha ke imbono yakho?
Futhi ubuhlungu ngendaba kaPaul futhi. uPaul siyamazi thina abaningi edlala from uZisco Steel esadlala naKennedy Goli kungakabi neLangsha Steel ekhwekho kulokho kuyizisco E1 wabuya konke wazovula iLangsha Steel uPaul Gundani watshintsha kwaFizisco Steel wadlala iLangsha Steel ngokutshela ukuthi futhi he was so marvelous uPaul Gundani eno Kennedy Goli lo muntu wadlala ibhola elihle elishabusayo kwaze wayafika uFabish wabamthatha babuya bonke noNagoli kodwa uNagoli wabuya wazosala nje on the way kodwa uPaul Gundani wasala labano Madinga Ndlovu owilathi kuma Methodist abaningi sibili sonke sasibabona bengena bephuma kodwa uPaul Gundani was a regular member sonke sasiwazi eseselabo Chawanda nabo Alexander Maseko uyakwazi uPaul Gundani udlala indima esijabulele kakhulu so manje sizwa uPaul Gundani bachiyana nowilathi kumalo ngesikhathi esincane into ebuhlungu kakhulu adamlekana noma 2 years ehambile uwilathi kumalo kana noma test down 3 months ehambile manje ngathi uPaul Gundani selandelile lapha eseqale umsebenzi omuhle kangaka ebholini kusizisa ubuhlungu kakhulu ngoba ubeseveze amehlo amade kwamanye ama-players ukuthi hey labanye abafowethu ukuthi madoda lapha kulezigwenxa la kungaba nalokho asiboneni so nangu uPaul Gundani secatshe ngemva kwehlahla asisakwazi ukuthi manje abanye abafowethu baqalisela kuphi kumbe bakhona abambileyo abanye laba bakhona njengoba ngathi sinyalizwa likhuluma ngesifo obesebenza ukuthi ngabe bazonceda kakhulu kumele sibazwele abafowethu laba abancane please thina futhi sizobuhlungu kakhulu noma singahlali emakhaya kuyasibamba noma ngikhuluma so izividiyo ezibuhlungu
hayi kuyezwakala hayi sibongile kakhulu ngembono yakho.
Of course, for our radio listeners, unfortunately, it ends here. But the good news is we are streaming live. So go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on Live Talk. Ezra and Marlene, please do stay on the line. This is a Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Chris Gande, lingayika chana balaleli. Siyaqhubekela phambili kathesi nje ngemva kwemzuzu emfitshane.
For those of you who are just joining us, good evening, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are remembering Paul Gundani, a Zimbabwe soccer legend who passed on this afternoon. And of course, Gundani was now the Secretary General of the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe. He played for the Dream Team under the legendary and late coach Reinhard Fabish. Chris.
Yebo kambe abasanda sixhuma lamhlanje ke sixoxa ngemfa kaPaul Gundani yena obesazakala kakhulu kwezemidlalo umdlalo wenguqu udlalela amaqembu abalisana iLancashire Steel le Dream Team yona kwayo ama Warriors blessing.
And of course, our guests this evening, we have veteran sports analyst and broadcaster Ezra Chisasibanda. We also have Malina Chiedza Gadzirai, who worked with Gundani at the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe. Of course, Chris, you heard there from most of our callers in the first half of the show who are praising Gundani for his dedication to the sport that made him famous. And of course, like Ezra said, he was really not happy that some former soccer players were not interested in going into administration. And this is something that he was always pushing for soccer players to be, former players rather, to be involved in the world's most beautiful game, if we are to quote the great Brazilian Pele.
Yes, blessing. Yeah. Let's go back again to Ezra, and still on that point, Ezra Sibanda, on the complaints that were made by Gundani about the ex-footballers who are letting down the national team. What do you make of that? Are you subscribing to the same notion? Because we've heard some people saying, even if you are the best footballer, it doesn't mean that you can be an administrator.
Yes, most of the time they say you're best footballer, you don't make a good coach, but they've never been tried in administration, like Paul and Chiesa and Co are doing. That they are saying, please, ex-footballers, especially you legends, especially people with the names, you created your names. This is time to reward yourself and help promote and develop the game by coming back in the administration of the game. Forget about coaching, because the teams are very few in Zimbabwe. You can't all be coaches. Look at what is happening in Zimbabwe. The coach is getting abused every day. Hired 1 month down the line is fired. But you cannot all be competing for those few positions in football. The Premiership in Zimbabwe got only 16 teams. So how many of the legends are there in Zimbabwe? We are talking of hundreds. How many former players? Loads of them. So they are saying, why don't you target other positions besides coaching? Let's go to administration. Let's go to all these players' agents, players' management, and all that. So I believe that Paul was trying to do that whilst working for the current crop of players who are being manipulated by the teams in Zimbabwe. We know the state of the economy in Zimbabwe. Teams don't have money. But when a player has delivered or worked for that, they expect to be paid. The players are not paid. So Paul has been working for the players. There are a lot of players who are suffering as we speak now in Zimbabwe with no income at all. But you look at the service they provided to those clubs. It is really bad. My good friend Willard Kumalo, who was a legend, who played for Zimbabwe national side, Dream Team, went to Germany, came back, played for Lancashire Steel, played for Zisco Steel, worked, coached Lanterns, coached in One Africa, worked at Highlanders, managed and coached Highlanders. This is a player who died suffering alone, with no help. Paul Gundani, when I spoke to him on the phone, he was like crying and said, I can't believe that a player like Willard Kumar was just led to die, suffering alone, being ignored by his team, being ignored by everyone in Zimbabwe. So Paul Gundani and others were trying to say, no, let's protect our former players, let's protect the game.
And Chiesa, you were working with him. How frustrating was it? Because last time I talked to him also, we were talking about the national team when the team went to Malawi and to use a bus, And, he was really stressed, and he was saying he could not believe what was happening. How is it like to represent the players with all that is happening in Zimbabwe?
Well, like you said, it is very, very frustrating to represent footballers in Zimbabwe because of the way they are treated. And just going back a little bit to what Ezra is saying and what you were asking concerning footballers being administrators in the game, I'll just refer you to the way that, for example, the Footballers Union of Zimbabwe has been structured. We have the former players, people like Paul Gundani, Maringo, Hebedik, Nomsa Boys Moyo, who are the executive members. And then we have a secretariat that have academics like myself and our project director. So what Paul really wanted, what he was saying was that in as much as you might not have the technical or the academic know-how of running an organization, you hire people who have that expertise, people who've gone to school for such issues, but then we blend it. So, for example, when I was working with Paul Gundani, he would tell me what it meant to be a soccer player. He would tell me what it meant to travel to Wange from Harare and have to play a game at 3 p.m. and arrive in Wange at 2 p.m. So I got to understand what it meant to be a footballer. So that's what he meant by saying, former footballers should come in and be administrators. It's not that the former footballers should come in and be accountants or be the project directors or something like that. The professionals will be hired, but the former footballers will be there to lead and show them and make people understand what it meant to be a footballer. So getting back to what you're saying, seeing players going hungry or even having a wrong diet, because I remember at our office we have a draft nutrition guide for players, and they come to you and they say, I haven't been paid for 6 months. How am I supposed to eat fruits like this? And yet I cannot even afford a loaf of bread for my family. It becomes very, very frustrating. So it hasn't been easy for us, as an organization to try and convince these clubs to understand what it means to have footballers being taken care of, footballers' welfare being at the core of the running of a club.
Thank you so much. And of course, this program is not all about mourning Paul Gundani, but it's also about remembering him and celebrating his life. And there's no better way, Chris, to celebrate him than to bring this song that became so famous when the likes of Gundani were playing for the Zimbabwe Warriors. Let's just take a listen. Of course, going down memory lane, remembering the golden generation of the Zimbabwe Warriors. And of course, the song is Vakomana Wekwedu by Tanga Wekwa Sando. Chris,
Hey,
this
bless
indeed...
it really took me down memory lane. I wonder why they're not playing music as good as this.
I know.
And where did Tanga Wekosando go? Is this?
I know. You see, just like...
maybe if the team plays like the dream team, he is going to reset it.
Indeed. Of course, we are still looking for another dream team. I mean, you know, in America, they Michael Jordan, that's I think where they Zimbabwe borrowed this dream team when he was also playing for the US national team. And the Zimbabwe national team was that good that many called it the dream team. And, you know, if we are to quote Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Ngugi is fond of saying, I went to Makerere University when it was still Makerere University. So the likes of Gundani can say, we played for the Zimbabwe national team when it was still the Zimbabwe national team. Ezra, your thoughts?
You're right, guys. It took me down memory lane. And you're talking of the production of NS Chitango Gasanda. This was proper creativity. These guys, they were not relying on the technology. These days, music, they just go to the computer and produce. So there's no hard work at all. You're talking of proper production. If you come into football, you're talking of committed guys, Paul Gundani and the late Willard Khumalo, Adam Love, and all those guys. Those were really committed footballers.
Thank you, Ezra. Chris, what?
Yes, Blessing, we have another caller. We have Slokashats Jays Simanampofu. Kunjani ba?
Ngiyaphila ba kunjani?
Siyaphila. Kunjani khona ngapho eSouth Africa?
Kuyabanda nje kancane.
Okay. Sesihlangana la ngenhlupho lengenkathazo lezi ezikamnumzana Gundani.
Bakithi ezibuhlungu bakithi ngemva kokuba siyongula Khumalo ensukwini ezincane ezidluleyo asilamala ngamarutshwane sikhalela uLathi namhla uGundani sehambile yazi le ibelile iqembu elathatha iZimbabwe layifaka kumephu iqembu elabisa abantu bagcwala iNational Sports Stadium 60,000 yagcwala abantu balandela i-team bonke ngendlela ababedlala ngayo uLathi ngendlela ababedlala ngayo Gundani ngendlela ababedlala ngayo Adam Ski labo shonayo ngomyokho nalawo suka siya ku-national team indaba ezibuhlungu kakhulu bakithi lezi
manje ubona ngani kuyini okungenziwa ukuthi kubuyele njalo ku-dream team
ku-dream team ukhanya ngathi kunenge okufuna ukwenziwa kokuqala kumele kuqale kulungisiswe iZIFA ngokwayo njengenhlanganiso ekhokhela ezemidlalo elizweni. Okwesibili kutholakala imali lama-sponsor lokho konke lokho kwenzakala ama iZIFA imi kahle ama-sponsor kahle botholakala. Sisuke lapho siyofuna ukuthi singathola ucoach njengoFabis. Lesho ukuthi uFabis sofa ku-East Zimbabwe noma singazenze ku-World Cup noma singazenze ku-Nations Cup ngesikhathi coach i-national team yethu kodwa he still my best coach ku-national team ukuthi uma singathola ucoach onjeyana ngibona ngathi konke kungalunga sibili.
Okay, hayi kuyezwakala ayisibongile kakhulu ngembono yakho.
Ngiyabonga baba.
Blessing, the caller there is saying it's said that, you know, we can't have a dream team again, but he's saying maybe we need to get coaches who are like Fabish.
Charismatic. I mean, he reminds me of Mourinho. You know, very charismatic.
Very charismatic.
Though, of course, Ezra and Chiedza must be Arsenal fans.
I know Ezra is definitely.
Of course, I know you are Chelsea, Blessing.
I'm Barcelona. When Chelsea is winning, I will come back.
Okay.
Chiedza, you are Arsenal, right?
Yes, I'm Arsenal, a big Ghana fan, and we'll be playing tonight later on at Munich. So you guys should pray for us.
Indeed.
And I know that Paul Gundani, who, if he was still alive, would have loved Arsenal to win.
Yeah, indeed. Chiedza?
Well, Paul, to be honest with you, Paul became a little bit neutral as soon as he started working for the players. He just didn't really understand which team he supported. So he would just come and he would analyze the game for you, and you don't know which team he was supporting. So, well, he was a little bit inclined towards Liverpool, really.
Of course, we also have some messages on my Facebook page about this passing on of Gundani. Kenan Kenny Mabwe says, so said. Yobe Kansengwa says, said, may he so rest in peace. Wejira Onyo Marasha says, Ijira Yodu Tose, rest in peace. Bill Dubris says, may he so rest in peace. Anthony Nyamashisha Mashora, rest in peace. Arnold Tsunga, the lawyer, may he so rest in eternal peace. And we have Rushizai Rushidzo says, very sad news. Precious Shumba of the Ara Residence Trust says, very sad. Daniel Muzenda, said indeed. He was a fine gentleman and a fine footballer during his time. Last time I met him, he was on his way to Gaborone with Francis Chandida. What a humble guy. Rest in peace. Philip Mabande says, my homeboy, I still have your memories whilst you were playing for Lancashire Steel and the Warriors. May he so rest in peace. Gogowa Dante says, may he so rest in peace. Stephen Sunday Kafambe. Stephen actually played for Lancashire Steel. He says, shame, rest in peace. My former team manager, we will miss you. Pof Petro says, homeboy, rest in peace. Missed already. My mutual friend, Pasari Gute. Matthias Kalulu says, may he so rest in peace. Regai Tsunga says, very sad. May he so rest in peace. Takura Mujgano says, a great loss to Zimbabwean football, to the Zimbabwean football fraternity. May he so rest in peace. Chris, those are some of the messages that we have. I think I'll read maybe just the last one here. That's from Pishai Muchauraya of the Renewal Democrats of Zimbabwe. He says he will be missed as a player and administrator who dedicated most of his time to the welfare of soccer players who are at times greatly shortchanged by the football clubs for various reasons. Chris.
Yes, Blessing. I also have a message here from Jefferson who says, Paul Gundani was passionate about the welfare of soccer players. He used to come with well-researched papers before Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Education, Sports, Arts and Culture. He will discuss his vision with clarity. Zimbabwe has lost a great soccer legend. I saw him during the Dream Team playing the solid midfield like a genius. Rest in peace. If Zimbabwe had a soccer heroes acre, definitely he would have been honored. And another one, Blessing, he says, this one is from Tonderai. And Tonderai says, thank you so much. Unlike the sad news of this legend of soccer, Paul Gundani, may his soul rest in peace. Blessing.
And Ezra, just coming back to you, somebody was saying if we had a soccer heroes acre, he was definitely going to be buried there. Is enough being done to honor our soccer legends or just any sports persons in general?
Not at all. You are talking of a country, you are talking of a government who thinks that being a hero, you should be a politician belonging to the ruling party. So that's where the problem is. We have lost great heroes in footballers, in sports, in all the sports in Zimbabwe, in music, in everywhere. Those are the people who really deserve the accolades. Those are the people who really deserve the hero status. Mm-hmm. But in Zimbabwe, no matter what you do, as long as you didn't belong to the ruling party or to hold a top government position, you will never be recognized as a hero. You are just one of those people in Zimbabwe. Can you compare Paul Gundani? Can you compare Adam Lovo with just anybody else? Look at some of the heroes who are laid at the heroes acre there and compare with what this guy guys have done for the nation, the services they've rendered to our country, playing football at the highest stage, raising the flag of Zimbabwe, and then you compare it with the other guys who are lying there, and then everything is a mess in that country. As I said before, no one is a hero in Zimbabwe unless you belong to a political party which is in government at the moment.
And Chiedza, what was it about Gundani and Kwekwe? Because I remember I would call him and he say, "I'm driving to go back home." Why did he not move to Harare? Do you know?
Paul Gundani, even when he came to Bulawayo, like Chiedza will tell you, he becomes restless thinking of going back to Kwekwe. He just loved the Midlands, the home heart of Zimbabwe. He just loved his area. You know, when you grow up in an area, you have a bond. You know the areas, you love the fresh air, you love the people, you love everything about the area. So Paul Gundani felt lost when he was in Harare or Bulawayo. So every time when he goes for these meetings, he was always thinking of going back to Kwekwe.
And Chiedza, can you come in there?
Yes, the reason why Paul went to Kwekwe was because when he played for Lancashire still and Zisco still, his signing on fee was a house. And that is the house that he owned in Kwekwe. He didn't rent that house. So, you know, he always said that, you know, I'm maintaining this house because I want to show that there is more in football, because he was supposed to have gone and played for a big club in South Africa. And then he was lured back in Zim, and then he said, I want a house. And so every time he wanted to represent players, he always used his house as an example and said, you know what, this was my signing on fee. So if you're getting $1,000 for 5 years signing on fees, I don't understand what respect your club is giving you. So he had an attachment to that house because it's something that came from his own sweat, and it was a reminder of him being a football player. And then, of course, well, as Footballers Union of Zimbabwe, we've got offices in Harare and Bulawayo, and him having been our head of secretariat, he had to shuttle between Harare and Bulawayo. So he was in the middle as well. So it's either he was in Bulawayo at the Bulawayo office or he had to come to Harare. But yes, he said, you know what, I'm not going to sell my house so that I come and rent in Harare. This house is something that I got because of the reason that I played football.
Indeed. It's not all about Harare and Bulawayo. Chris, I remember even from the same Midlands province, there was the great musician Tongai Dewamoyo. He did not move from the Midlands. He stayed there.
Despite doing well, he would just, play Harare, get the money, go back. Yes. So, Chiedza, there's a question I meant to ask you when we were starting this show, but it kind of slipped my mind. It has come back again. And this question is about the union itself. What can you tell us about the union right now, like the membership, and how much it is pushing forward for what Gundani passionately wanted for the footballers?
Well, maybe I answered a bit in part. It remains frustrating to work for a union or any union in any industry, in any country. But then what we know is that the union is recognized by the football authorities that are there, from FIFA to CAF to ZIFA to the clubs that are running in Zimbabwe. So one big story that might or might not have made headlines is the Masimba Mambare case, where we even attached the Highlanders so that they could pay him at $10,000 signing on fee. And yes, that money came out. It wasn't really a big story, but then for us it was a huge success, and it showed us that, players to have that power to exercise their rights. So the position of the union at the moment, in as much as it is frustrating, we still are there to do our best to represent the interests of the players, in as much as they are manipulated by the club. Our main problem, which going forward, which maybe somebody who replace Gundani as my boss, who will have to come in and address, is something that where a player joins a club. Sometimes they're a bit desperate, and, they just maybe need money for rent for that month. But then Paul Gundani would say, don't sign a contract until you really see what's in that contract. So the position of the union is that we have a draft contract, we've got a draft memorandum of understanding, which at this moment is still being waiting to be signed by the authorities at ZIFA, and hopefully the new ZIFA president will understand what that memorandum of understanding means and that collective bargaining agreement is. There are a lot of documents, it remains, I think that's one of the saddest things that I have to say, that, I just looked at my office and looked at everything that remains pending, that Paul Gundani and also Desmond even started, that still are to see fruition and be fulfilled. But, we're there and we're doing our best to represent players in as much as the economy is bad, and in as much as the clubs are sometimes hostile to us. We do have clubs that work well with us. I will not say 100% clubs that don't work with us, but then those that do, the players are happy, and even sometimes it's even reflected in the positions of the clubs. Some clubs are not doing so well because of the way they administered and the way players are being treated. So it remains an ongoing project. It's not yet 100% complete, and we hope to just carry on the dream forward, just at least for his sake, because he was passionate about everything. And everybody knows Paul Gundani was fearless when it came to the welfare of footballers.
So, just a quick one. In terms of membership, my colleague here, Blessing, he's one of the best foreign-based players that I know. So, how can he be allowed to be a member, or what criteria do you use?
We have a membership form, Footballers Union of Zimbabwe. It's for Zimbabwean footballers. It's not for footballers in Zimbabwe. I hope you understand that. So even Zimbabwean footballers who are playing outside Zimbabwe, professional footballers, that is, we cannot represent everybody, including losers. Although now, unfortunately, I would say sometimes unfortunately, but we've had even the amateur league players coming to us for assistance, and of course we didn't turn them away. But then the Footballers Union is open to any Zimbabwean player, whether they're in Zimbabwe or outside Zimbabwe, who's a professional and plays for a particular league. Why we want professionals is because we want that paper trail that shows that they have a contract, the remuneration package, where the club is meeting their requirements, where the club is reaching. We don't want just people who are just playing soccer maybe once in 6 months and there's nothing to show for it. So we do have a criteria, but it's basically for professional players who are playing within leagues in and outside Zimbabwe.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, Blessing, you can't join, my brother.
Okay, but Ezra, how significant is this role that Gundani was playing?
It was a big role, and he was shaping our football in Zimbabwe. The Mambare case, which is a case study. They won a case against the Highlanders, a big giant of Zimbabwean football, and it wasn't easy for them. But when you see a union winning such a case, you have to take them serious. So these people now, what we are saying is that Paul is gone. We hope that they will remain united together and continue with this union to help our players. Chesa will tell you, a lot of boys, they've gone 6 months, 3 months, but they play football every weekend without pay. We understand but once there's a contract which you sign that you pay players, you've got to do it. Just pay the players. And better was stealing the money from the get takings. Make sure that the contractual obligations are fulfilled than just letting these guys go without pay. I just wish Cheta and other people can continue with what Paul was doing, then help our players.
And Cheta, your last word?
I remain deeply sad, and I have been in shock. It's just been a very difficult day for me to just lose a person that I was talking to just yesterday, and losing a boss who was very passionate and always was there to teach me about everything that I know about football. I still would want to say that he's left us with a lot of work to do, and I'm hoping to just continue with that work. And I just want to quote from one of his last messages. This is a message from Paul Gundani to the former players, and he says, "For once, let us pull in the same direction and work towards the development of our game. This is a game we have all dedicated our lives to work for. It is us, the former footballers, who can guarantee the future generations of a brighter future by fighting to have the involvement of former players in mainstream football administration. We cannot all
Thank
be
you.
involved.
Thank
but
you.
let us fight
Thank
for
you.
those with the necessary knowledge to be included.
Thank you, Chiedza.
So
Unfortunately,
that's my last word.
thank you. Unfortunately, time is not our best ally, but thank you, Ezra Sbanda. Thank you, Chiedza, and thanks to our viewers, our callers, and those who send messages on Facebook and WhatsApp, and of course our team behind the scenes. Signing off. This is yours truly, Blessing Zulu,
and Chris Gande. Good night, Zimbabwe.